Democracy is never, never, never guaranteed. I hope we all rededicate ourselves to the essential work of our democracy, which is to unify this nation. To see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans.
Welcome back to America Decides. That was, of course, President Biden at the White House's 4th of July festivities, sharing the event with active duty military families, where he stayed, the president did, away from presidential politics, at least for the time being. Maura Gillespie and Kristian Ramos join us now. Maura is founder of Blue Stack Strategies and previously served as an advisor to former House Speaker John Boehner, and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, Republicans both. Kristian is a Democratic strategist and senior advisor at Way to Win. Kristian, let me start with you. What would you say is the state currently of the Biden reelection campaign? Is it full tilt or still warming up?
I think we're in a warming up stage at this moment. As I understand it, we're really going to be going full in after the summer. Around September is what folks close to the campaign are telling me is when they're really going to begin their launch of the campaigns, going up on air and telling the story of the last 2.5 years, which is one of prosperity and lifting up the American people. Look, we've seen record job creation. We've seen record small business creation. Inflation is actually down nearly to 2% in America. This administration has an incredible story to tell, and they're going to tell it. Whether you're Latino, whether you're Black, whether you're white, you're working, you're creating small businesses, you're creating opportunity. If we get out there and tell that story, I think we're going to be looking pretty good in November of 2024.
Kristian, as you well know, the president in Chicago recently embraced fully the term Biden economics. Interestingly, Republicans do as well, but for different reasons. They want the country to debate from their terms, Bidenomics, because they say the story's mostly negative. Is that where the centerpiece of the 2024 campaign will be fought?
Listen, I think it's going to be fought on two levels. Bidenomics is one of them. And again, we have a record number of jobs, small business creation, inflation coming down, Americans feeling prosperous right now. But the other piece has to be extremism and MAGA. And if Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis is the nominee, that's going to be hard to avoid. What have the Republican Party done in the last 3.5 years? Nothing, literally nothing. They voted against infrastructure, by and large. They voted against the CHIPS Act. They voted against a lot of these very popular programs. They struck down Roe v. Wade. They struck down the student loan forgiveness program. They have taken things away from the American people. And as long as we're having that conversation about the president and all of the things that he's done and how he's helped the American people and all of the extremism of the Republican Party, again, we will be in very good shape in November.
Maura, are you nervous for Republicans generally when Democrats like Kristian say we're going to fight over Bidenomics and extremism?
Not necessarily. I think with things like the student loan forgiveness program, it was also brought up during the debt ceiling debate. And I believe the American people learned that would have saved them by cutting that program $460 billion, according to the CBO, Congressional Budget Office. So there are plenty of things that the Republican Party and the GOP 2024 candidates can be touting to highlight that the Biden economics is actually negative, because when they go to the grocery store, they're paying astronomical prices for what they, for their weekly or monthly haul. And that's going to impact them directly. And I think there's going to be a real concern over that, bringing them to the ballot box.
And would you say, Maura, the essence of the Republican argument against Bidenomics is inflation means whatever your wage increases are, they haven't kept up with that inflation. Therefore, and I've seen this in a few tweets from members of Congress, you've had a pay cut for month upon month upon month. Is that the centerpiece?
A lot of it is inflation, obviously. And I think a big part of it, like you had talked about the student loan issue, I mean, erasing that student debt, you can't erase that debt. It goes somewhere. And I think the American people are pretty smart to realize that it goes to the taxpayer. They're still going to be paying for it. So it's not an erase situation. It's still these costs that things aren't free. And to pretend like they are is a disservice to the people who are paying for it.
Kristian, as you look at this race on the Republican side and in your conversations with those on the Biden campaign, do they assume, as many reporters looking at this do, that Trump is in a better position now than he was in 2016, is likely to be the Republican nominee, and this race isn't as fluid as a lot of the other Republican challengers want to suggest?
When I talk to folks close to the Biden campaign, one thing is very clear. They're not taking anything for granted, whether it's Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump. The issue is MAGA and extremism. And again, I go back to this narrative and this story that we have to tell about the last 3 years. Under Democrats, the lowest wage earners in this country saw their wages increase the most. Under Donald Trump, under Republicans, they gave tax cuts to billionaires, to millionaires, to the wealthiest people and corporations, and they didn't help workers at all. On top of that, they created chaos, whether it's Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. They are banning books. They are burning books. They are outlawing words. They do not want women to have autonomy over their body. I don't know anyone in this country who thinks burning books is a good idea. I don't think most Americans support getting rid of Roe v. Wade. So when you tell that story with the story of what we've seen over the last 2.5, 3 years of creation of jobs, small businesses, and the lowering of inflation. Again, we're nearly back to 2% inflation, which is what it was when Joe Biden took office. We will be in great shape in 2024.
Maura, is the Republican presidential nomination battle fluid, or do you think not only, obviously, former President Trump is the front runner, but in all likelihood, the Republican nominee in 2024?
It's not surprising that the incumbent, former president is ahead in the polls, but there's a lot of time between now and Election Day, and I remain hopeful that that will change. I think pointing out a lot of the issues where it's self-serving for former President Trump to focus solely on his own issues and himself and his vendettas, people will eventually get sick of that, because there are real issues, as we're discussing, that people are going to be impacted by that don't necessarily involve his recklessness in classified documents and his legal woes. So I remain hopeful. We have great candidates in the GOP 24 lineup. You just showed them there on the screen, and I believe they deserve real consideration by the Republican Party.
Maura Gillespie and Kristian Ramos, we thank you for your time.